Hello, gamers! What's going on? It's a boy after the games here. Back here with another stream. Another daily stream. Yep. Yeah, I still coming from last night's stream of Game Garden 3. Like, oh my goodness, I still can't believe that. But now continuing with Deltarune stuff, so I have to sit in tomorrow get my my first Deltarune fan animation reaction stream. So yep. I still want to say not this week, but next week. I won't be able to do a stream on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. So that's I think June 14th. Yeah, July 14th, all the way to 16th. Because I'll be going somewhere at 7. So yeah. And that's what time I'm doing streams at 7 p.m. And I like doing like that time. So yep. But it's not this week, that's next week. So yep. But I might have to stop doing streams right because the only songs I'm be doing, I think, of Deltarune series streams and Deltarune fan animation reaction streams. So yeah, until Manifesto 3 comes out in either September or October. So yeah. Anyways, we have to first put up with once the few was posted before on the Deltarune Top 5 Leaks stream. I just wanted to I saw it at the end of the Warren Night, it's not Death. With us, I think I'm 100% confirmed. That's Death. But yeah, a little before I saw it, I did watch Heroes by Heroes video on what Don't Forget might be about, and he guessed like the people that were commentating it or was like singing it. After except for that Timmy kind of sings it, but I think likely that Death is anyway, so I'm probably saying that's line by to Noel because I saw that in the comment section of his video. Which makes a lot of sense, but I think it 100% makes sense if it's Rousey. He did point out that there's a piece of Deltarune Morse which has Rousey saying it. Don't forget. I wonder if I can. Rousey. Dang, hold on. I'm gonna see if I can get that pulled up so y'all can see what I'm talking about. Rousey, don't forget. Morse. It was like a sticker, I think. What's it, a sticker? That's what I'm talking about, man. Don't you have to pull the freaking... Oh, no, I got it. Alright, let me start seeing my... Actually, can I just open the image in open image in a new tab? Yeah, then I'm gonna zoom it in a lot. Alright, there we go. Let me close this out. Let me pull this over to here. Alright, let me tell you what I'm talking about here. See screen. There we go. Images. I'm gonna full screen this. So yeah, but as you can see, it's Rousey singing Don't Forget. So opposite that 100% confirms that Rousey the one singing Don't Forget, even though Terrified did say Moses in canon. But I mean, this makes so much sense because Rousey is with us in the dark world. And it makes sense to say, Don't forget I'm with you in the dark. And he knows about like the Warren, like the soul sign-in. Yep. So I was so Rousey's 100% the one singing Don't Forget. So it would like basically, it was Des singing that's a lullaby to Noel, but I don't know. I'm also believe that it's Rousey. But yeah. Anyways, just wanted to go get that first series knocked out. Now let's get to this one. From Wistel. Let's see who he thinks the Warren Night is. Let's go.
Can anyone hear me? It's dark. It's so dark.
Oh wait, whoops, I said
From the very beginning of chapter 1, we've been told about the Knight, a being with the power to open dark fountains and destroy the world. The king speaks of them with respect, admitting his purpose is to help them plunge the world into darkness. The queen, on the other hand, calls them by their full title, the Roaring Knight.
Yep,
We
so she doesn't know what the Roaring
glimpse
is.
of them opening a new fountain. She acknowledges their power, and just like the king, seeks to further their goals. Even Jevil and Spamton reference them. But that leaves one question. Who is the Knight? Well, until recently, there was no answer. But lucky for you, I have it. The bat, the antlers, the connection to Carol and the bunker, the musical leitmotif and their battle theme, the very same one that was hidden for years on a website that seemed totally irrelevant.
Yeah, just Baptist free steaks.
Points to one person. Because the real question isn't who the Knight is, but why they are the Knight. And to answer that question, and to understand why her disappearance is the key to everything, we first need to understand who she is. Death Holiday.
Yep.
Des is the eldest daughter of the Holiday family, and technically she has never appeared in the game.
Yes, he hasn't.
Everything we know about her comes from the Holiday family, which includes Rudy, the father. He's laid up in the hometown hospital with some kind of strange illness. But in Chapter 2, we can find him playing console games with Noelle. And in Chapter 4, we see him at the church service, even though Toriel says he needs to head back to the hospital to rest. Then there's Carol, the mother. She's also the mayor of hometown, and you should know she has a somewhat suspicious connection to Chris. On the weird route in Chapter 4, while Sans and Toriel are making a whole lot of noise, Chris gets a call from...
Before you start this, I want to go back to Fahrenheit Masons again. So I can't really come back to Fahrenheit Masons. But I did watch a Fahrenheit Mason, I think, yesterday, where it was like, what if Rudy was a Warren Knight? And I mean, Rudy is like a good candidate because why is he out of like bed and... Like Toriel can which I said, like Toriel like tells Woody to go to the hospital because, and plus we don't even know like what kind of sickness like Woody has or why he's exactly in there. I think when Woody told us like he's in there, like said like that it says like a checkup or something. But boy, what kind of checkup takes like 2+ days? So I think because in that Fahrenheit Mason, it's only like at the hospital and going. So I made the Darkwood like the school, then go to the hospital, then getting up again, going to make the Darkwood for the computer lab, then, so on and so forth. With that, it does make a lot of sense. But I don't know, man. It just, if it wasn't does not be Des, I'm like really upset because that wouldn't answer like what Des is. Like, who would see Des? We probably 100% see Des in this game. But yeah.
Carol telling them that Noelle is hoping to see them tomorrow at the town festival. And all of this brings us to Noelle, the younger daughter. In the first chapter, she seemed like just a side character, but in the second, she becomes part of our team, and we can manipulate her into doing some pretty disturbing things. This is how we can start or not start the Snowgrave, or Weird Route, a sort of genocide run involving a thorny ring and lots of snow. These decisions have huge consequences, especially in Chapter 4, where we either see her as a normal girl who invites us to her house, or we use her to put that thorny ring back on. Yeah. But we'll dive deeper into that route in its own dedicated video someday. Des, on the other hand, is mentioned in several of Noelle's flashbacks, where she says they loved spending time together on adventures with Chris.
You also see Des in, this probably gets that too, on Tina's flashback in Chapter 3.
Israel, showing just how close the Dreener and Holiday families used to be. And Tenna, the boss of Chapter 3, directly mentions Des in his game show minigames, specifically during the rock and roll segment. He reminds Chris how they used to sing and rehearse songs in front of the TV, while Noelle's sister played the guitar, which, as we're about to see, connects directly to the Find Her theme, leading us to ask, where is she? The first possibility is simple. She's gone. Des died, and that's why everyone talks about her with such a sense of nostalgia.
No, I don't think she's dead. I don't think she is.
In her honor and memory. However, there are tons of clues, both in and out of the game, that suggest Noelle's sister hasn't kicked the bucket just yet. If we visit the police station at the end of Chapter 2, after Undyne runs off to catch some escaped criminals, we can read a poster about Asgore's resignation from the police force following a certain disappearance. This carries a lot more weight when we remember that Asgore and Rudy, Des's dad, used to get along really well until their relationship was likely severed by his daughter's disappearance. And there's a clue outside the game that definitely confirms Des is missing. There's a website called the Spamton Sweepstakes. I'm sure many of you already know it, since it was the only piece of lore we had for years, and you'll know it served as a charity drive for the Child's Play charity, and that Toby, obviously, used it to hide several links full of secrets and details about Deltarune Chapters 3, 4, and 5. Among these links, there's one that takes us to a dark page with a red guitar, the same one we find in Des's room. Clicking on it plays an audio track called findher.oog. Furthermore, Chapter 2's track 30, titled Lost Girl, which plays specifically when Noelle appears, sounds strangely similar. These details, from the disappearance in town to the audio tracks connected to the guitar in Des's room, clearly tell us that she is the lost girl who's still alive, waiting to be found. So it's time to talk about someone who took it upon themselves to find us the other side of the coin. The Roaring Knight.
Yep.
According to the Deltarune prophecy, the Knight is a powerful being who, just like a lightner, can use enough determination to stab the earth and create a dark fountain, giving life to a new dark world. Clear examples of lightners are Chris, Susie, and even Noelle, beings from the light world who can act, attack, or use magic. The same applies to the Knight, who has various abilities and is therefore a lightner, not a darkner like Rousey or any being native to a dark world. So this means both our heroes and the Knight can cover the world in darkness with the fountains they create, unleashing chaos and the Titans, enormous beings made of darkness with no control over their actions,
look like
spelling
I'm
the
top
end
to
of life
fall.
as we know it. However, not all is lost. Gerson, a wise turtle we first met in Undertale, tells us more about the prophecy of the Deltarune, saying that the symbol of the 3 triangles and the winged circle represents the heroes and the angel who will free us from the darkness. But some believe this could also be the angel of death, a being of destruction looking to liberate us, in heavy air quotes, from this mortal coil. Getting back to the Roaring Knight, they are mentioned several times on our adventure. The queen talks about the origin of her world's dark fountain. The king says the knight gave them a new purpose. Jevil alludes to their existence, and Spamton acts super weird whenever he's asked about them. It was even believed that Chris themselves could be the Roaring Knight, since they can create fountains, though we had very little information at the time. But it wasn't until the end of Chapter 3 that they finally made their first physical appearance. Their look is defined by thin arms and legs, and most notably a head with a very peculiar shape, one that resembles antlers. It might remind you of a certain member of the Holiday family. They have a tough black armor that looks like the darkness of the fountains themselves, with a skeletal frame underneath, leaving a bony waist exposed. They can manifest a weapon that at first looks like a baseball bat, but it soon morphs into a type of dark sword that they use for some of their attacks, which all consist of slashing, throwing stars, and summoning more swords. And if we're going to talk about the sword and armor, we have to consider one very important detail. Susie is able to break off a fragment of their weapon to analyze later, discovering that it's another shadow crystal, just like the ones from the previous secret bosses. This also gives Chris a new weapon, an empty fragment that cuts enemies very effectively with a bleed and shadow effect. Curiously, they can also zip around as a fast-moving sphere of matter, and if they start to get weak, they project a static effect that you can see after wearing them down in the fight. This is maybe a symbol of the strong connection between the dark world and the light world, and how they both affect the appearance and state of objects and people. And the prophecy wasn't exaggerating when it said they were powerful. They can defeat Susie and Rousey in a single blow, leaving them in critical condition. However, they don't seem to do much damage to Chris, which opens the door to a lot of questions. Which inevitably, and with all the clues on the table, leads us to ask, once and for all, why Des? There are a ton of details that connect Des to the Roaring Knight in some way, and a lot of them have to do with her appearance and personality. We can find most of these in the Holiday House, which Chris and Susie enter after the church service to work on a school project with Noelle. Among the various rooms in the home, we find the black door. Coincidence? I think not. That leads to Des's room. Let's start with the baseball bat leaning against a wall. It looks a bit beat up, which suggests that Des liked to play ball and her bat got damaged somehow. Also, if you look at her computer, you'll notice the mouse is on the left side of the monitor, which means Des is left-handed. With these two facts, we can go back to the knight's appearance and notice an interesting detail. The weapon they manifest initially takes the form of a bat, as if it were the very same one. Then there's a prophecy Rousey tells us about in Chapter 3. He uses a chair as an example to explain how, when darkness gets darker than dark, it warps our perception of objects. That very same chair can also be seen distorted among the posters hanging in Des'
that's
closet.
weird, I never noticed that.
For us, the player, that Des is in a place darker than dark, somewhere in the dark world. Another clue we can't ignore is the guitar in Des's room. Tucked inside is a note with the code 122 ? The same code that if we complete it with a 5 lets us open the bunker. What's more, the code is clearly meant to be 1225, but Chris doesn't let us finish reading it. It's because they don't want the player to find out what's hidden in there, which makes the possibility that they have a plan with the knight even more likely. And here's a fun fact. 1225 is part of Noelle's username, HolidayGirl1225, and is also a reference to Christmas, 1225. And while we're on the subject of fun facts, The creator of this video somehow predicted a year before the new chapters came out that the inside of the guitar would be important. That said, there are so many, and I mean so many more clues surrounding this number. Like an Easter egg we can only access by using the code 1225 on a gacha machine, which takes us to a red dungeon holding some of the most interesting secrets and revelations. Or the secret dialogue with Asgard, where we discover he has a black shard, the same kind you can only get from the Roaring Knight. And in that same scene, the music that plays is The Distance Between the Two, which not only references the rift between Chris and their soul in this specific context, but it also uses the same leitmotif as Find Her and Lost Girl. This is a massive topic that deserves its own deep analysis, and that's exactly why I'm just mentioning it briefly. I'm planning for this to be a 3-part series, and I think this information, along with other things, deserves its own video where we can dive much deeper into its meaning for Des and the future of Deltarune. Now, with all this information on the table, it's practically impossible to ignore that one way or another, everything ends up revolving around Des and the Knight. And that's exactly why it's so important to analyze the battle. The Roaring Knight is known for showing our heroes no mercy, except for Chris. They're the only one of the 3 who gets a chance to recover and keep fighting. And if you manage to go through the entire fight without taking a single hit, a tiny detail happens that changes everything. Chris will cough. In response, the Knight gives a slight nod of their head, and on their very next turn, they launch the charge that leads to their final attack. This means they're coordinated. They're connected. Chris and the Knight are on the same page, and since Susie and Rousey are lasting too long, they both decide to just end the fight. After you defeat them, Susie rushes in trying to tackle them to the ground, but the Knight holds firm, causing a fragment of their sword to break off and fall to the floor along with a shadow crystal. Susie taunts them, saying they weren't all they were cracked up to be. The Knight's response? A single devastating blow that lays her out flat. They do the same to Rousey when he tries to heal her. But Chris?
Like a relentless weed, moderate to severe ulcerative colitis symptoms can keep coming.
The Knight just touches their shoulder with the sword, forcing them to their knees before faking their own defeat. After that, the Knight tries to grab Toriel, but Susie, with her last breath, stops them. Suddenly spears appear, trying to strike the Knight, revealing the arrival of police officer Undyne in the Dark World. The Roaring Knight snatches her and escapes the Dark World, prompting Susie and Chris to give chase, accidentally ending up back in the Light World. Susie sees someone running in the distance, so they sprint to catch them, assuming it's the Knight with Undyne. They cut through the cathedral to head south of hometown and find themselves at the bunker, which violently slams shut.
Yeah, we never
Furious,
see the Knight
she starts
during this
pounding
part.
on the gate until a numeric panel is revealed with 3 symbols written above it: a pine tree, a police badge, and the Deltarune. These could represent citizens of hometown: the pine tree for Mayor Carroll, the police badge for Undyne, and the Deltarune most likely for Chris or the Angel, because Chris themselves decides to inspect the panel, and seconds later the door opens as if they were being invited to pass into this unknown dark world. All of this happens in chapter 3, and in the next, the Knight opens a dark fountain in the cathedral. And not only that, they are able to create a fountain inside another dark fountain, which causes a Titan to be born just as the prophecy foretold, making it clear they know exactly how the Dark Worlds work. But enough of that. It's time to analyze what makes Toby Fox's games truly stand out: the music. For anyone who doesn't know, a leitmotif is a recurring musical theme
we know.
or a
Come
central
on.
motif, often repeated in various art forms to emphasize something specific. In the case of Undertale and Deltarune, it's used for and when significant characters appear on screen. For example, the spider has an incredible theme, and we only see her once in the entire game. So, now that we know what a leitmotif is, let's listen closely for similarities in the music surrounding the Knight. But first, let's refresh our memory with the red guitar and Find Her, Des's main theme.
Yeah, it's not like law school.
Now a snippet from the Roaring Knight's main theme.
Oh, I can hear it. It's like sped up, but A lot. By a lot, I mean by a lot. About like 1,000%.
You'll notice a direct reference to the music representing Dess's disappearance in the music that plays against the knight. Not to mention that Black Knife has a segment that, when played in reverse, hides a secret melody. You can pick out the same melody on any piano to hear it more clearly. And it bears a striking resemblance to the Lost Girl audio and its first 5 seconds. A fun fact, Leitner's Live has the Find Her leitmotif in one part of the song, and it's Chris who plays the melody with their guitar. If we overthink it a little, this could be interpreted as them being the one who's looking for Des. The idea gains even more weight when you consider Ralsei's lyrics, because I'm with you in the dark, with your heart as my mark, which says a lot on its own and is a direct reference to Don't Forget.
See, David, force the word that's Ralsei saying it, Don't Forget. Because that entire, what's it, bad song episode, so whatever, so Don't Forget. But the title way too bad. Again, bad like as in like going to this bad as in that's his baseball bat again. So yeah, I'm still sticking with it being Des, but I don't know, it might change my mind. Have 10 more minutes to change my mind.
Video completely dedicated to Des, but I thought it was worth mentioning here. And now, with all this evidence, there should only be one possible path. Des is the Roaring Knight.
Exactly.
Unless she is not.
Here we go. Let's have some fun with this.
When I first planned out this theory, I was convinced there was no other option but Des being the knight. However, as I got deeper into the research, I discovered a connection that changed everything. And yes, I'm talking about Carol, Noelle and Des's mother, but not for the reasons everyone thinks. In fact, let's just jump right into it. At the end of chapter 4, Chris gets a phone call that appears as a creepy black text box, and a distorted voice says,
Don't forget, it can go into that again.
Now, at the end of the weird route, Chris gets another call, this time from Carol, asking him to visit Noelle. This is especially suspicious because in both calls, someone is asking for a favor, which could very well be the same favor, helping Noelle. Besides, why would the big reward for the Snowgrave route be a phone call from Carol? Clearly, Toby Fox's intention was for us to connect Carol with the knight, or at least with this mysterious entity. On top of that, in the Holiday family dining room table, there's a katana hanging on the wall, a weapon that looks similar to the one the knight uses.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know about that.
Antlers are a perfect match for the Roaring Knight's antlers. The problem, for me at least, was that this wasn't quite a smoking gun. It could all just be a coincidence, right? Well, after racking my brain a bit, I found something that truly changes everything.
What?
In Noelle's house, right after she and Susie leave the room, Chris makes a phone call. A voice, the exact same voice from the end of chapter 4, with the same text box, says the following.
Red Bull Zero. Zero sugar, 100% wings with monk fruit.
Well, when you rejoin Susie and Noelle, the latter tells Asgore not to worry, her mom will be home in several more hours like she usually is. But Carol was already at the door, and she walked in knowing Susie had the guitar in her hands. In other words, Chris definitely called Carol to tell her that Susie was messing with the guitar. Furthermore, she storms into the house angry because she already knew what was happening thanks to Chris, who, by the way,
okay, I'm actually trying to believe this.
Kindness compared to everyone else.
Okay, yeah. But then what would this be? Okay, I'm trying to believe, but then where's Des then? Still missing. If we don't find Des in this game, I'll be absolutely upset. I prefer just like a chapter 8. But as far as you know, it's only top in top tools. But I'm sure that top 7 is gonna be like a big top, probably like a 15-hour top tool, or even like 16-hour top tool, like wrapping up with everything. So yeah, Well, that depends on where chapter 5 leaves off and chapter 6.
To top it all off, at the Holiday House, Carol Holiday's room is usually inaccessible. However, we can actually get in there after Chris rips out their soul and explore through the air vents. Inside, we get a glimpse of a bed, a corkboard, and a nightstand with a vase. Next to the table is an object that looks like the hilt of a sword, which data mining has confirmed is another katana, suggesting that Carol owns at least 2 of them. What's more, an unused sprite found in the game files shows her with a dark liquid, possibly blood, staining her face. But hold on, because we still haven't talked about the most important call of them all, which happens in the kitchen. This is where Carol, and yes, at this point I'm just gonna assume it's her, talks to Chris about the next dark fountain. In red letters, a message warns that Susie must not get the guitar, while a message in white text says a soul is needed, that without Chris's soul, nothing will be possible. Then it says the police officer's sacrifice will be next week, and what a coincidence that the Roaring Knight just happened to try and kidnap Undyne, the cop. Finally, it tells him to go to the church at night, which is exactly why Chris escapes the room at the end of chapter 4. This makes the theory that Carol is the Roaring Knight, using her roars to search for Des, make way more sense. And the power of a soul is necessary for all this, but we'll save that for a video completely dedicated to the topic. And let's not forget Noelle confirming her mother's obsession with hearts and how Chris as a kid used to pretend to rip their heart out of their chest and chase her with it. Dialogue like that, at least to me, is no coincidence. It was very deliberately included. Now, you could argue that the calls don't have to be from the Knight. Maybe it's just Carol hiding her identity from the player for some reason. Perhaps at Chris's request, which could be true, if it weren't for the massive coincidence that the Knight is also allied with Chris. As we saw before, in the middle of the battle, if Rose and Susie hold out for too long, Chris will cough, and the Knight responds with a slight nod before launching their final attack. They are definitely collaborating, and who else is Chris coordinating with? That's right, Carol Holiday. And if you're still not totally convinced, let me tell you about the hidden audio files found in chapters 1 and 2.
Oh,
we could hear deaths lost in a dark place with no idea how much time had passed. Well, for chapters 3 and 4, new audio files were released. We won't dive too deep into them because that deserves its own dedicated video on Des, but I'll leave you with the most important part for this theory.
Jesus, wow, goes one down. Oh, it's not from doorway. What noise? Oh wait, this guy's a noise.
This shows us 2 things. First, Des entered a dark world from her bedroom, right after going through the door, just like she says. That's why her door is black. It's a reference to the fact that at one point, it was a dark fountain, which Des might have opened by accident, or someone else did. And second, Des is still trapped in a place darker than dark, the game's code. She herself says she feels like it's been years this time, which means she's been there since chapters 1 and 2. The fact that these audio files are...
Oh yeah, true.
At AbbVie, we chase scientific breakthroughs to support healthier futures, with treatments for over 75...
are being revealed with each new chapter hidden in the code, tells us that Des is still lost. She's still there, in the code, the only place we can get these audio files from. That's why she says she feels like someone is listening, because when we play them, we are that someone for her, and she hears that scratching noise, which is us digging through the code. And finally, it's time to address the last remaining but. Des is left-handed, and the Knight holds their sword with their left hand, right? Well, even though it became a common belief, when they hold the sword in their left hand, it's actually because they're attacking us with their right hand, shooting energy or whatever that is. And when they strike with the sword, they switch it to their right hand and attack with the right hand. Not to mention the sword is exactly like the one in her home, And Noelle literally points out that it's her mom's sword, a completely unnecessary detail unless it was a subtle clue left by the game. So then why so many clues pointing to Des? Why create an entire website that revolved around her if she wasn't the Roaring Knight in the end? Because she is not the journey, she is the destination. Just like the One Ring in the Lord of the Rings drives the plot of all 3 movies because it has to be destroyed, spoilers by the way if you haven't seen a 20-year-old movie, Des functions as a MacGuffin in Deltarune. Her disappearance drives the quest for Chris, for Carol, the Roaring Knight, and in a different way for us. All while she acts as the catalyst for the conflict in the game's hidden story. Therefore,
yes, he did believe this series. That could be killed, but I don't know. I still hope it's Des.
She's still out there. And just like the song we found on the Spampton Sweepstakes website,
but because of the game code, because he's stuck in the game code, it couldn't be her. I think he might be right. I think it is cool.
Of course, this doesn't mean there aren't still a ton of questions about Des that we didn't dive into, like the possibility she might not be alive, or why we, as players, are the ones who motivate the weird route. And even if it's not Carol, the only other real possibility left is that she's controlling the night, because as we learn from Gersenboom, and just like in Undertale, when a monster dies and turns to dust, their remains are transferred into a cherished object. Which means, and this is a whole other video, but I'm mentioning it now to cover all the bases, Des could have died, maybe inside a dark world, but her essence became imbued in an object, which was then able to gain its own consciousness and part of Des's. That's why I wanted to tell you that I've already got a series of at least 2 more videos planned out to explain all that, including an exclusive video on the Knight and Carol, plus everything we know about the angel from the prophecy, whose identity, to me at least, is much, much clearer thanks to these chapters. Not to mention a ton of other ideas that I think are interesting and that you guys might love. It all depends on how much you support this video. For my part, I had an absolute blast making it, so don't forget to comment what you think. I always read them.
Yeah, that's how I mean that last video. Was he made this video right here, how Asco and Toby to spoil them top 5. Was right doing that top 5 ready to doing top 5 leaks stream I did a few days ago. But that was a good series now. I did believe that Carol could be in the night, but I know we won't find to top 7 probably, so yeah. It's down to 16 minutes, but yeah, we're gonna go on to one more video, and I wanted to make a quick video because the way it's episode 1, so I'm gonna be like a 10-minute video. Let me see. But then therefore that would mean it was not just 11 minutes, so that could be good. Yeah, let's do that one. Let's see what Mr. Indecisive that for that 3-minute series all. And then I will do it for the stream. Alright. So I'll see my screen again. And this all like a lot has to do on my extra laptop. It's good. Alright, good. Let's go.
So Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 just came out, as you might have heard. And with that comes tons of new material to discuss and theorize about. And as a certified brain cell user and GOAT fan, I've taken it upon myself to finally try my hand at this whole critical thinking thing. And after countless hours of forming a thought, I've come up with a few Deltarune mini-theories, if you will, and only some of them require the use of the crackpot to make sense. So...
Theory 1. That's an actual.
The most memorable minigame of Chapter 3 that none of us actually got to read is the song Raise Your Bats. A fun but ultimately meaningless song written for the sake of a minigame. But what do I think that this song in particular is written by Des and Azrael? A song called Raise Your Bats? Oh, wait. Obvious evidence is obvious. But don't worry, I've got a bit more evidence than that, I hope. In Chapter 4, we get access to Des's room. In it, we finally get a real look into the type of person that Des is. A punk gal with some spunk. She really feels like a cool and hip early 2000s teen. And within her room, we see a few things. First, every instrument used in Raise Your Bats. The drum set, the microphone, and, of course, her guitar. Along with some other random, probably expensive instruments thrown on the floor like dirty laundry, which any true musician will tell you is based as hell. On her closet, though, we see some posters for concerts, supposedly of her own music. When interacting with them, we see Chris mention many concerts, some which may never be played. Snooping around some more, we find Azrael's shirt in the closet and his retainer? Seems like Susie ain't the only one pulling in this room. But with this, we can infer Azriel wrote music with Des, and maybe even performed with her. And going back to the song, who do we see singing vocals? Azriel, I mean Ralsei. But assuming I'm right, and Raise Your Bats was written by the two, maybe there's some information that we can glean about their roles in the story in the future. The main verse of the song begins with, "Plug your ears."
When the demon heart is crying and the blood is gushing bright.
Yeah, I never took the time to analyze the lyrics of this song, because I was just talking about I'm here to hear this video where he analyzed the lyrics of Don't Forget. But when the demon heart is crying, demon heart. Kawa? Because Kawa is not that's like called a demon and until Deltarune uniform. So maybe kind of about Kawa, so like when Kawa is crying, maybe like Kawa's heart is crying, maybe, and the blood is because in Bible sounds like something Lancer would say in chapter 1 or Susie. What's your bad for born in fight?
Fight when their hope is slowly dying.
Because see, when your hope is slowly dying. Okay, I'm saying, but apart from hope, that does connect really back to Azriel because of the Hopes and Dreams song. Okay, that's the theme for Azriel Dream or Hopes and Dreams. I go to have a few of her dreams and that dream chapter 1 again, but and if you're so lost his rights, would take benefits of fight, Halloween. I don't know. Looks like I'm dead into the night.
And your future's lost its right. Raise up your bed and face the fright. Let's knock 'em dead into the night.
Overall, not too much to glean from here. It's the exact sort of punk lyrics that we would expect from Des. However, the mention of knocking dead into the night is interesting. If you relate this to what's happening in the Dark Worlds, we could infer that Des will end up fighting against whatever the demon heart is.
Follow me into the dark with your heart as the arc which shall shine.
Again, so similar to Don't Forget. So now maybe that's coming to it being sung by Des. I don't know, it's either Des or Ralsei who sings Don't Forget. But come find me to the dark. Skin does connect her back to be the freaking night, but with your heart as the arc.
Show you the way.
No, I turn those lines.
I'm with you in the dark with your.
See, because I'm with you in the dark. Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark. And we also do sing that part. But if it's true that Des wrote this song, that can also mean that he wrote Don't Forget. Ah! You see, it's very conflicting. I don't know. It's Des, but if Des did write this song, and if he says because I'm with you in the dark, which is literally lyrics that come straight from Don't Forget, I'm with you in the dark. But the freaking stickle, man. But the more than I canon though, that's a saying. Let's go in. If your heart is my mark, so guide you the way. Guide, how are your heart? Apart from like the light with the heart, like as we say, I think we said that with the heart, or the soul does like sound like light. I think. I don't know.
Your heart is my mark, which shall guide you the way.
One, the heart being a fairly obvious reference to the soul for the player. The heart being both the vessel and the shining light for everybody. Also, the heart shining light is a huge battle mechanic in Chapter 4 against both
about that battle
and the Titan, which seems maybe important for lore. And of course, the arguable motto for the entire game, I am with you in the dark, shows up here as well. Even more interestingly, the entire chorus is sung to the melody of Lost Girl. So the song is painting Des as a heroic figure, one trailing and protecting our cast through their adventures. But what makes me think Azriel is a part to play here too? Admittedly, that evidence is a bit more flimsy. But we know for a fact that Azriel and Des were close. Very close. And with that, Ralsei is the one to sing vocals on the song. To me, the chorus of the song could also read as a conversation between Chris and Azriel/Ralsei, with Ralsei always accompanying Chris through the Dark Worlds. Either way, Raise Your Bats feels like our first true look into Des's and possibly Azriel's personality.
Alright, I'll put a full theory. They always go off of prophecy.
This follows another much older theory in the fan base, that Susie is not actually the girl of prophecy, but rather Noelle. There's a solid theory that Noelle is actually the girl of prophecy, and the Snowgrave route I think seems to hint to that. However, Susie managed to right place and right time her way right into the prophecy. For a few reasons, I think this fits very cleanly into the character arcs for both Susie and Noelle. But as for evidence for this, first and least importantly, the prophecy never explicitly states that Susie is the one in the prophecy.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Alright, is that really all I have for this? I have to have some more. Oh, here we go. First, let me quickly recap some ideas behind the Noelle is the prophecy theory. Firstly, Susie is the only character that we, the player, can't control. Susie routinely makes her own decisions that'll impact the story. Meanwhile, even with Noelle in the party, we the player learn how to control her as well. Secondly, Gerson in his secret fight in Chapter 4 hints that Susie was meant to be an antagonist in Chapter 1. With Chapter 1 of Lord of the Hammers being called March of the Dark King, this is where the heroes go and defeat the king and stop the dragon. Later, Gerson even calls Susie the dragon. Susie's story is about her never finding a place where she can feel accepted, always needing to play the villain to survive. Initially, that's all there was. But now that she is supposedly in the prophecy, she finally finds a place where she belongs, with friends who she trusts. But Susie carves her own path and follows no one else's instructions, even saying in Chapter 4 she will defy the prophecy if whatever horrible ending does come to pass. Even from just a story perspective, Susie finding her place in her friends as a predestined fate goes against everything her story is about. Instead, her story is far more satisfying as a character, learning that she actually was not chosen by fate, and was once again ignored. However, she learns that she can carve her own path into becoming a hero. But not only does the switch up serve Susie's story, but I think Noelle's too. Noelle throughout all of Deltarune is learning to stand up for herself, to finally break free from what others want from her, such as her mother Carol, Birdley, or even us the player in the Snowgrave route. If Noelle were initially in the prophecy, being told what to do by fate, all of her efforts to become her own person wouldn't make sense. Rather, by being replaced by Susie, she can finally learn that no one, not even a prophecy, can stop her from making her own choices. Perhaps even within the Snowgrave routes, Noelle will eventually reject the player's influence and control. This may be how, eventually, the Snowgrave route re-merges with the main route to create a single ending for the game. Except, instead of her defying her mother, she defies a much more terrifying villain. This switch-up, to me, serves as the themes of fate Deltarune is setting up, and provides a great story for both Susie and Noelle.
Hey, I got to go down too. I don't know. See what someone is. I'm missing Tremos.
Alright. Let's look back at Gerson's description of Lord of the Hammers. We already touched on it a bit earlier, but I think each of the chapters seem to link to
I know that Asio is
Chapter
missing.
5 is called The Fields of Pink and Gold, and the events are described as a vast garden is charred in an inferno of jealousy.
That was a big point about Asco. Tap out that tattoo and tap
Many people online have pointed out that Asgore's color scheme in this game is indeed pink and gold. And with the mention of flowers and gardens, it seems that Chapter 5 will take place in Asgore's flower shop. Stop! It's me from the alternate timeline where I actually did all of my research. Apparently, there's a part of the prophecy that explicitly states the next chapter will be in Asgore's flower shop. So this is no longer a theory, just fact. If we look around in Chapter 4, we can find some dialogue from Asgore talking in Carol's room. He explains that he has a plan to finally make Toriel believe him, to make everyone believe him about what really happened. While he doesn't say what specifically, we can safely assume that he's talking about what happened to Des, the thing that resulted in him being removed as police chief. He says that all he wanted to do was protect everyone. So it seems that, similar to Undertale, Asgore made a risky decision for what he thought was for the greater good, but one that many others didn't agree with. But this hints that Asgore knows about the Dark Worlds, maybe that he's even been in one. Along with this, he seems to at least somewhat be working with Carol in this. He was there for Des's disappearance, and other than Carol, seems to be the one who knows the most about it. While we know Carol removed him as police chief, she still obviously cares for him to an extent. She gives him a place for a shop, and even when he makes no sales, she gives him a job as her housekeeper. And he's also one of the boys with Rudy! He even says to Susie that Carol's a pretty nice person once you get to know her. This, along with having access to what seems to be a shadow crystal, is definitely a hint that the flower shop is where Chapter 5 will take place at.
Yeah, 100%.
What could cause this garden to be set ablaze in an inferno of jealousy?
Yeah, that.
Now, for Azrael, I'll be honest, I don't know what role he might play, but I've got a feeling he won't be absent, especially with how close him and Des seem to be. I just can't see a world where Azrael is not a key player in Des' story, whatever that ends up being.
Alright. Still, last one. The Lord of Hammers?
This theory, for the last time, goes back to Gerson's description of Lord of the Hammers. There's one more piece of information here that I think hits at the entire ending of Deltarune, and that is what happened to Chapter 6. Gerson says that the author never finished Chapter 6, almost like the story swallowed him up. And that's very specific wording, swallowed up. In fact, this is very similar to what we know will happen in the prophecy, where darkness swallows the world. But there's even another instance that we know of, one where darkness swallows something whole. Something or someone. That's right, it's Gaster, baby! Can't be a Deltarune theory without the party!
Of course,
I won't go out on it too long, but much of the fandom seems to agree that whatever Deltarune is, Gaster seems to be the author, from his Entry 17 logs, to the Goner Maker scenes, to Deltarune being presented as a program for the player. I don't think it's a stretch here that Gaster is the author who would become swallowed whole by his story, i.e. the prophecy, i.e. the darkness.
This is talking about Gaster. Harry by Harry also did guess that Gaster could be the one saying don't forget, but I don't think that's right. Even though this is gonna go back to a lot of series, and y'all got to, I'm gonna talk about this for a good minute. So, bear me while I go back to that series with Gaster, possibly the single don't forget. Do you remember the series that led to one of these series streams that Wealthy is the vessel that we create at the beginning of the game. Remember who's the one that people think that is nowhere in that part? That would be Castle. And then so this way, if Wealthy gets that sticker of him saying don't forget, that could be him singing a song that his creator made. You know, W.D. Gaster with I know after time see a folk can go for the team where that Wealthy is the vessel, because I was always swim. I just got that he's lonely, but I don't know. I have to go back and see the time of Chapter 4 to see, but I don't know Chapter 3 for anything. But if goes to that sticker, well, I'll say good to be the song, because singing the song that his creator made, that would be the Gaster. And he sings again, a lot of it again, in the Wasted Bath song, with saying that's out your wrote. So I don't know, man. I don't know what to think about that. I don't know. I still am gonna stick with either Des or Wealthy being the one that sang that song. Even though I'm more likely torn out to Des singing it more than Wealthy. But I don't know.
And that's how Deltarune will end. 6 chapters of God damn it. Okay,
7.
Here's where the crackpot comes into play a little bit. Gerson de Suzy then talks about how the youth were the ones who should have picked up the pen and finished the book, but no one ever did. That is, except Suzy, a person gleaming with hope, who Gerson believes will finally pick up the pen and keep writing. And this is how I think Deltarune will actually end. Whatever horrible fate the prophecy speaks of will happen. The roaring will take place, and everyone, even Gaster, would be swallowed up by the grandeur of his story. But that's all in Chapter 6. In our lives, terrible things will happen. We all will suffer hardships and loss. No change in decisions or defying fate can change that. But what happens when the prophecy ends? When all that put to writing finally comes to a close? Well, some may just leave it there and wallow in the darkness. But others, with a pen of hope, can now finally finish the story. Only this time, they get to write down their own ending, free of fate. And there you go, a couple of crackpot mini theories from someone who just fried up the last couple of brains.
I think I'll put the first one the most from Des and as real wine and don't forget.
Cells. Those are going to take a few more weeks to get back.
Alright, there we go. Let me finish that. Let me go there. Alright, there we go. Yep, but I did some. The first one was good on you know, they say that kill is a knife, said Des, then I not believe that Des is the one that is singing don't forget. Yeah. Also, it's at the end of it's a girl singing don't forget, and I was just going to be a boy, not a girl, so that could put him to be Des singing it, maybe against a lullaby to Noel, maybe. But don't forget, I'm with you in the dark. But if Death is in the night, then seriously with us in the dark. That's like the one line confused by. Don't forget I'm with you in the dark. The only character that's with us in the dark world is Rousey. But I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna tell you, must watching. I know the next Deltarune series will be probably, I don't say Tuesday, probably on Thursday. So after tomorrow's stream, it probably won't be another stream until Thursday. So yeah, thinking next, not this week, but next week on July 14th, right to 16th, there's not going to be streams, but then on the 17th, there will be streams. I'm pretty sure do a serial stream and then another fan animation reaction stream. So yeah, and that's all we're doing on the channel until until the new the Man Pencil 3 comes out. Also, I know I have to do the free on the already getting on street. That's what I would do as soon as I get my HP laptop back. So yeah, that's the only getting on street thing I have left to do, and then I'm all done with getting on street. So yeah. Hey, that's it. Most watching to subscribe, comment, game today. That's most watching. Guys, till stay. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. for my first Deltarune fan animation stream. Alright, see y'all later. Deuces, remember, stay determined, and I'm with you. Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark. See ya tomorrow. Bye. Bye, y'all.